Hello, my friends. Welcome back to The Gun Show. We always appreciate you showing up, tuning in, paying attention, hopefully paying attention. I bet some people don't, but we're going to try and be entertaining enough to where you pay attention. We're very excited to talk about manufacturing. So if you've tuned into the show today, if you were randomly searching a hashtag or looking for a new podcast, you're like, Gun Show, that's awesome. I love guns. I don't have any. It's actually my last name. There's two N's and not one N. And if you're here from muscles, I apologize for that as well. My producer has some great muscles. I actually saw his Instagram. He was a stud muffin, but me, not really. I'm getting older. I used to be a great fit soccer player, and I had muscles then. So if you've tuned in for either of those, there's a chance we could talk about it. Although I find that unlikely today. We talk about manufacturing. And why do we talk about manufacturing? Well, I'm in a studio today. It's called Podcast Junkies, and I've seen people in this studio with millions and millions of followers on Instagram and TikTok, and they're on TV shows, and I'm going, man, how do I get to be that cool? And manufacturing is just not considered that cool. So we're trying to make it cool. We're trying to make it fun. And why is that? Well, it's because everything around us is made by manufacturing. If it's not people or air, it's likely been touched in one way or another by manufacturing somehow, somewhere. Even your food, the containers, things like that. There's even, GMOs, which I try not to eat, but I think they're in my food already. Genetically modified. What is the last part of that? You guys tell me. Put it in the comments. I had a brain fart. Anyway, we'll move on to the sponsors. Sponsors, thank you so much. AMT, we appreciate you. MC and Bonnie and all the folks over there. We're all incredibly excited about IMTS this year. We're hoping it's the most profound event so far for IMTS. Hopefully we break records. Over 100,000 people we're hoping, right? I know we've already had some exciting moments getting all the booths together and the meetings together, and we're all pretty pumped about that. I hope to see everyone there for everyone who's watching and listening to the show. Second one is eBay Grow Systems Shop Rescue. We're pumped about that. Anyone who watches Shop Rescue, if you yourself would like to be on that show, if you want some consulting, some advice, get your shop either the turnaround it needs or increased profit. I believe Mike Watkins says double the profit in 3 years guaranteed. I mean, that's one heck of a guarantee. So eBay Grow Systems, thank you for everything you're doing, and Shop Rescue is something that MTD and eBay are working on together, and we're excited about getting that out as well. So I have a great guest with me today. He is actually the president of the NTMA, discussionably the biggest manufacturing association in the country. So I'm very excited to welcome Roger Atkins with me today. Roger, how are we doing? Welcome back to The Gun Show, my friends. This is the VIP edition.
Tony, guns up, buddy.
Yeah, guns up. I like that. Well, on this show, as you probably already know, is we love to humanize this industry. If everything around us is made by manufacturing, who's doing it, right? But you've told me a little bit, I've been on podcasts. Maybe my story is exciting, but people have heard it too much. So if you would like to summarize in one way or another, because I'm going to ask you multiple questions, and you and I know can talk as much time as we spent in Indianapolis together. Right. I know we could talk about 4 hours on this podcast. So if you want to give me just a brief summary, because I think it's important for people who don't know you or who are looking to get into an association to figure out how you got in the position that you're in right now, running the largest association for manufacturing in the country.
I'm asking myself that question still. I think I drew the short straw, but really I was born and raised in the manufacturing business, Tony, and my dad had a shop. And so, as a young kid, I'm in the shop, sweeping the shop, but working on mini bikes and go-karts. And, my dad he had 3 boys, so his position was, you don't have to take over my business, but you do owe me to know what I do. And so we worked in there in the summers and found out about manufacturing. But if I were to be perfectly honest, I can't say that it really was a draw on me at the time. I think that it was more about me working on things that I wanted versus seeing what they were really making. And so I went to college, got a business degree. My senior year, my dad calls me and says, I got a position. Would you consider it? I said, well, I'd consider a position, but I'm not going to consider it because I'm your son. He said, fair enough. And so anyway, I went in, and the funny thing about it, it was shipping and receiving manager. And I laugh about that, but that's probably the most educational position I ever had in manufacturing. I learned more in that position because what I realized is I was the hub of the wheel. Nothing in that shop could happen without me having to be involved in it. And so for a kid who was a college-educated guy but knew nothing about manufacturing, it was a great place to learn. And what I found out is when I went into manufacturing, where it may not have been what I thought my life career would be, I fell in love with it. All of a sudden I realized there's nothing that we touch in our daily lives, as you said, is not made by some manufacturer somewhere. Everything you touch, like you say, anything involved in people's lives, it's touched by a manufacturer first. And so it taught me a lot. And so that's what just has let my love for the industry grow.
Yeah, I definitely share the love for the industry. And since I have you on the show, it's not every day we have the opportunity to have representatives of associations here. And I would make the discussion, some people would say I'd make the argument. I don't like to argue. But I'd make the discussion that associations are, in part, a glue of manufacturing. We connect people in associations. We try to navigate some of the ups and downs of manufacturing throughout the years. We are supposed to bring awareness to the government level. We're supposed to um, discuss a labor shortage through the lack of information that the next generation of manufacturers are being told, right? So I want to discuss a lot of these topics, and if we can, maybe address some possibilities or even how the NTMA themselves are working in some of these areas, right? So if it's okay with you, Roger, I would love to discuss twofold on creating awareness for the next generation. One, what can be done or what should be done, and how is NTMA participating in that?
Well, I'll just go back on that question and just tell you back when I started in NTMA. My dad took me to a meeting and said, I'm gonna introduce you to people, teach you more about manufacturing than I'll ever be able to teach you." And that was my first NTMA meeting. And if my dad told me one thing that was true in manufacturing, that was it. I learned more from my industry peers than my dad was ever able to teach me. And he knew that. He knew if I would connect with the peers in our industry, some of them are very friendly competitors, some very close competitors, but in that competitiveness of our association, we were a trusted group of people, knowing we were stronger together than we would be apart. And so that's sort of how I started. And so NTMA, I started NTMA my first year of getting out of school, and I've been in NTMA my entire career. So when coming up and after many years in the industry to come up and run an association that I've seen grow. But my dad went to his grave telling you it was his NTMA friends that taught him how to run a business. It was his NTMA friends that solved the problems he didn't know how to solve. And it wasn't a book. It wasn't someone else. It wasn't his best friend who knew nothing about manufacturing. It was his manufacturing friends. Because, what you realize is we need us all to survive. And, when you can help somebody, and entrepreneurs are problem solvers. Whether it's their problem or somebody else's problems, manufacturers were problem solvers. And so for NTMA, we try to be problem solvers. I look at us as the big barge that can break the waters coming in, where the smaller boats can follow us behind. That's the small businesses, because they can get wiped out with the waves of disruption that come to manufacturing. And so from NTMA's standpoint, I try to be that barge. Let us take the big hits of the waves. You get behind and sell your ship, whatever floats your boat, whatever you do, stay behind us so that you're not wiped out by these things you have no control over as individual companies. And not that NTMA has control of them, but as a consolidated group, we get more control of them. And so that's one of the big things that we try to focus on is there's strength in numbers. I believe that I think many times our customers want us to stay little individual companies and little individual this and individual that. Sometimes, frankly, I think our government wants us to be individual this and individual that, because if you really take the magnitude of what small business and what small manufacturers create for our economy and GDP and employment, we play a huge role. But the reality is, many people on this broadcast don't know the role we play. And NTMA is this year we're on a focus on tell your story. How do we better tell our story? Manufacturers of any whatever they're making, they're experts at making parts. They're experts at making desks, whatever it may be, microphones. But they take it for granted their ability to make these complex parts. They make complex parts that send, spacecrafts into space, that send things to the ocean floor, put things in your body to keep you healthy and strong, and to save you over, catastrophic things in your body, much less in our daily lives. Cars we drive, all those things, but manufacturers take it for granted. They're the most humble people in the world. They don't know how to brag on themselves. And so we are trying to push a program this year, Tell Your Story, helping manufacturers tell their story. Because one thing different than my generation is, frankly, we just wanted a job. We wanted to go in and work somewhere. We fell in love with manufacturing, but it was not about necessarily where the parts we were making went. It was more about making the parts. I love taking a piece of old rusty steel, and then our guys created a piece of art out of it. And you got a lot of artwork over here on your
indeed,
shelf. But and seeing that, but today people really want to know. We've done a poor job at telling people where everything we make is used. And I would say this generation today, they're interested in where it's used. They want to be a part of changing the world. And the reality is, if you want to be a part of changing the world, there's not a greater place to be than manufacturing, because we change the world. We make things that change the world. And we just need for people to know what we do make that does change the world. So if you want to change the world, manufacturing is a place to be.
Roger, last time you and I sat down, you coined the term invisible industry, and I've used that 100 times ever since, just in case. And if everyone's listening who has heard me say that, it came from Roger, just so you know. We sat down in Indianapolis and had that conversation. So, talking just now, you said if you want to change the world, and you're right. I think that's probably a good motivation, but we still have to somehow get that message to an audience who doesn't really have a place to find it unless you know to find it, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, MTDCNC being a very popular news channel. We got some other great folks out there spreading the word. We have individual influencers who have now come in because they didn't see enough change happening quickly enough. So they said, you know what? We're going to do it on our own.
Right.
So there's great folks out there doing influencing style stuff. Again, I'd make the discussion and not the argument, Roger, that there is some sort of a disconnect between the generation that's about to move out and the generation that's about to move in. And there is a bridge area in that middle ground where we say, okay, we've been machinists for X amount of time, but we also understand how social media works and how connecting works. I'll share a quick story with the audience. For me, we had no CNC machines. We had a couple of manual machines in our shop area. There was a little bit of shop work, some agriculture work. I definitely was in FFA, Future Farmers of America, where I was. But we didn't really have any machines. I think welding was probably the most popular. And with a 400,000 person skills gap right now in welding alone, I guess it didn't work too well. I do know there used to be machines until they replaced it with the gym for the football team. Nothing has gotten better in most places since that time. And another story I want to share is in upstate New York. There is a school that has over 300 students in STEM program alone, and they are brilliant, working with the Allendale Machinery System guys up there, and they've won awards. They might have changed by now, but when I was last there, they were the only accredited Gene Haas high school in the country. And of these over 300 students, over 250 of them came for summer school on their own without being required. And these kids are going into these high-profile places like the Lockheed Martins, like the Boeings, right out of high school because there's such a demand. So with what you were saying, Roger, and I don't mean to steal your thunder and talk too much because this show's about you, is exactly what Roger said. These kids want to change the world. How do we connect? So going back to my point, I think that there is a small disconnect between the people who are in charge, and I do mean in charge, much like the people who are getting ready to leave the industry and go to retirement. These are the folks in charge of how to connect with the coming in industry. And you said it really, really well, which was when I came in, I liked turning stuff into something, whereas the kids today want to know what they can do to help make change. So how do you think we can, again, twofold question for you, how can we inspire the leaders in this manufacturing field that have been doing this for 40 years to almost reinvent themselves on how to connect with the generation coming in so that we can make that move, make that effort? How do we do this?
Well, Tony, you're not exaggerating. There's a gap. There's no doubt that there's a gap of crossing over of this transitional leadership of our companies. I've told our people all along. I've spoken. Yeah, I think we're at least halfway through the transition. In the next 5 years, that transition's going to be made, and this second five is going to go faster than the first five went with the amount of change. But we have to get out and to our point in telling your story. It means something. People drive by your facility every day. And one thing that National Association of Manufacturers has put together, Manufacturing Day, it has really caught on across the country. It is our day, one day, but it is a day that you can open your shop to your community, to your schools, to the parents, teachers, students, and let them walk through your shop and see what you make. Give them an opportunity because, a little like me, I grew up in the shop, but I really didn't see. It was all about me making mini bikes and go karts and deer stands. It really wasn't about seeing the parts they were making. But once I got in there and started seeing the things we were making, that things weren't, wouldn't be able to happen without the parts we made. And that's the message. That's the story. But you can't just tell a story. It's sort of like telling somebody how marriage is. You don't know what marriage is like until you got into marriage.
And having
Well,
kids.
and having kids, yeah. So it's a little like the way a little manufacturing is, but we can do our best to show them, give them examples by letting them in our shop. The Student Summit at IMTS, tremendous opportunity for students to come and really get immersed with manufacturing. Because you want to talk about cool, manufacturing's cool. You just have to be exposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And once you're exposed to it, these kids, I've contended, are so much smarter than we were at their age. Their mind is so much broader thinking. What this generation can bring to manufacturing is incredible. We have to show them that it is an opportunity for them, because once they come in and see that they can take their strengths and create something from it, whether they're a machinist or they're a programmer, engineer, whatever it may be. There's a lot of roads within the manufacturing field. But NTMA is trying, we, as along with other associations, are trying to connect. As you and I, we connected over this very issue. How does the association world connect with this next generation? Whereas, this next generation looks at associations, frankly, and says, I don't need an association. I'm just, let's just be honest about it. And they say it because they can get it on the internet. They have access to instant information off the internet. And I would agree with you that the phenomenon of getting information so quickly at your fingertips is incredible. And I longed for that when I was young. And today this generation has it. But what I will tell you, what you don't have is that person peer-to-peer connection of somebody that can walk you through the problem. You can read about the problem, you can be told about the problem, but it's a difference when you're talking to somebody that's been through the problem, has lived the problem, solved the problem, and is willing to share you that problem. So I think this younger generation, I think that they're missing the relationship part that associations can bring, to realize that together it's a lot easier to solve the problem with a group of us than it is individually. And frankly, in today, one shop that's successful and 10 not successful isn't good for U.S. manufacturing. We need all 10 shops to be successful. And I think that if we want to see reshoring continue, bringing things back to the United States to be built, I think we have to make sure that we have the ability to make the product. And honestly, I think that that's somewhere created some of the gap. So much stuff was offshore during my career.
Mm-hmm.
That not only did it take away the opportunities, it took away the motivation, and it took shop class out of the high schools. It took all the trades out of the high school because our leaders decided to offshore to lower cost countries. And now we've seen it's taken a pandemic to show us the fallacy in that we're sitting here with nothing. We can't get it because ships are lined up, or we can't get it from these countries that are having more turmoil than we have, and we're sitting here without product. And now all of a sudden, the savings they probably have had the last 20 years could have easily been lost in the last 2 years because they can't get it. So now they're seeing that maybe the errors of our ways as a country, about reshoring and to bring it back. But to bring it back, manufacturing has to be a resurgence of manufacturing. And we talk about the invisible industry. We need to make it visible. We need, for whether young or old, we need to see, for everyone to see that it was manufacturers that built our country, that got us through war times when our country went to war. It was the small medium manufacturers that got us through those wars. It's the small medium manufacturers that have built our nation. And we lost that, and it's time to get it back. And we have to. That message has to come from every avenue, every microphone, whatever it is, has to be preaching that, and not preaching. It's about telling the story. It's about the opportunity. There's people that are gifted in a lot of areas other than manufacturing. But if they're gifted in manufacturing, I want them to know about manufacturing, and it's our job. And I will go out in my career telling the story of the opportunity, because it gave a 22-year-old kid an opportunity to have my entire career in manufacturing, and I've loved every minute of it. I've never had a job I hated. There weren't days I wasn't frustrated, but for the most part, I looked forward to going to the next day because everything was different. It was going to be another challenge the next day. I love that part of it, and I thought that we were making things that were changing the world.
This is Shop Rescue.
Hi, my name is Alex Renner. I'm an implementation project manager at Paperless Parts, the leading quoting and estimating software for manufacturers. For the little guy, really what we're all about doing is setting up a process that's repeatable, putting guardrails in place so that a shop is gonna make money on the jobs that they do win, be able to filter out the jobs that maybe might not be the right fit for them, and at the end of the day, save time and drive more profitability for their business. I'm truly bought into the mission. It was, when I saw the company, it really swayed me to take that step, and getting to see the light bulbs connect for our customers, see them give us accolades for how much time, money, savings they're generating with paperless, that's what keeps me ticking in this job.
I agree with you, Roger. Christian is my Howard Stern on this show, and I'm going to ask Christian a question that you don't. I'm not going to have you answer right now, Christian, but I'm going to ask it because I want you to think about it, and I want you to give me an honest answer. Christian is our sound producer, is the producer of this show. He's a great engineer of sorts in that method. Christian, if you've spent time with me now, you've heard a lot of these shows at this point, but manufacturing is still relatively new to you, and certainly was the day I walked in and before you heard any of these podcasts. So I want to ask you, and again, don't answer right now, how can we, as you are a very young man aspiring to do great things, how can we in manufacturing inspire a person like you to even care about it? So think about that as a general rule for the younger generation. What can we do? We talk about it a lot amongst ourselves, but we've been in it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, right? So I love fresh perspectives. I'm going to leave that over with Christian. We'll ask him that in a little bit. Two more branches I want to go off with for you, and one was just an idea while you were talking, so I'm going to throw it out to the audience, and everyone who's paying attention is just a massive, well, maybe, right? But in one or two words, up to you, is it somewhere around 24,000 manufacturing companies in the U.S.? What is that number, Roger?
Yeah, 24,000 could be members of our association, that they would meet under the NACIS code. There's 24,000 shops that could be an NTMA member. And so that's there's plenty other manufacturers, metal producing manufacturers outside, but in the precision manufacturing,
Gotcha.
tooling, die, there's 24,000 shops in the U.S.
Okay, I bring that up because of a pitch that I'm about to give. Get excited, folks, or maybe not. We'll see how the pitch goes. But the other aspect before I get to it, Roger, is funding to have people create awareness in middle schools and high schools doesn't really exist, right? Middle schools and high schools as public schools don't have a ton of money to throw towards something like that. So my question goes toward governmental resources. Now, the government claims to give a lot toward manufacturing, but the vast majority of that, from what I understand, goes to the big companies we all know the name of, right? But there is a large portion of small shops out there that also need funding. And every single one of these shops, maybe not everyone, because everyone means everyone, but a large majority of these shops are looking for people, right? So I'll slide into my pitch in just a minute after I ask you, is there anything we can do as associations, as friends of an industry, to maybe sway politics in any way? Maybe get into the White House and say, guys, the small shops are just as important, if not more important, to what we're doing. And if we don't do something, and maybe it's not a bad idea. I'm not here to negotiate this next part, but they're going to get integrated. They're going to get bought up. They're going to get incorporated into these bigger shops at some point, and we're no longer going to have the small to medium shops. So is there anything we can do from the government side of things, in your opinion?
Well, it's a wide open question, obviously, or setting me up one, but
The Dixie Chicks are singing in my head right now with Wide Open Spaces,
Yeah,
if you remember that song.
exactly. But the government has poured a lot of money into training, and of course manufacturing. They love that space. It's a good word for government.
Sure.
I'm not sure it's a word that they understand, but it's a good word to put money into manufacturing, and a lot of it goes to good things. But what trade associations like NTMA and many others that are associations that bring groups together, one thing the government doesn't do, they do not include us in the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
They shoot over us, and they go to the state levels, to what many know as the MEP network, which is Manufacturing Extension Partnerships. And so that's the way they choose to give their money out. And so they think that gets to the people faster and better. But when it comes to trades, you miss a lot of that.
Right.
Because NTMA is 7 day, 365 year over year focused on manufacturing and training and workforce development, as well as any other trades or organization is focused on that. And so the government doesn't see us as a solution to their problem. And we're not the solution to every problem, but we could be a big part of the answer for the precision manufacturing group. And so it's and the other thing is small businesses don't have the time, resources, and energy to go for these grants that are in some cases relatively easy to get. They just don't have a person in their companies to go after it.
Yeah,
and
that
to
makes
spend
sense.
time and resources, and it's that's just the reality of it. And so it's they would rather fight the battle than take the time that it takes, or get somebody to read up on how you do it. They don't have time for that. They're solving problems. They had problems yesterday, and they got new problems today. And that's what they're trying. That's the solutions they're trying to fight for. And that's where coming together as associations. If we can get the association community to be large enough to be able to move things, I think we can move them in Washington. But I go to Washington once a year. I meet with these guys. All of them realize the importance of them, but little give energy to it. And that's unfortunate, because I think the MEP, they can say that they're giving umpteen millions of dollars to manufacturing, and that's really their message.
Mm-hmm.
Is we're giving it to, and because we're giving it, you should vote for me.
Right.
And it's not necessarily about solutions, because to your point, the solutions got to be in the junior high schools, and those kids. And as somebody told me one time, we always said, if you just can convince the parents, it's not convincing the kids, it's convincing the parents. And one of my friends stopped me and he said, "Roger, you're wrong." And I go, "What do you mean you were wrong?" He said, "You don't have to convince the parents. You got to convince the mother. And if you convince the mother, you win."
That's a very fair point, I think. Well said. All right, you ready for my pitch?
I'm ready.
All right, so what if we took matters into our own hands? What if there's enough people listening right now that we could create a snowball of sorts, right? So there's no budget in middle schools and high schools, or at least very few budget. We do have some exceptional influencers in this industry that speak very well and can motivate. And we have thousands of companies across the country that are in need of employees. So far, right, correct?
So far, right.
All right. There are far more than 24,000 manufacturing companies out there. You just said 24,000 for precision only.
That's correct.
But let's take that number and say, what if every company out there that needed employees, that's invested in these outside resources to do recruiting for them, donated $1,000 to a fund? We called it a manufacturing fund. and let's pretend it was 24,000, and that ended up being 240,000. Do you think we could get, I don't know, myself, an Andrew Crow, a Megan Zimba, an Eddie Saunders, some of these other folks to travel the country for a year, split up that money, and excite the middle schoolers and high schoolers, and then in turn for that $1,000 that everyone donated, we guaranteed that you would start seeing recruitment real soon into your shops, and everything that we're fighting would no longer exist because we have excitement. I think we could turn something around if we took it into our own hands in a year or two.
Yeah, Tony, yeah, as you well, and we beat this subject to death, but it's gonna take something different.
Yeah.
It is gonna take, and that's why we've connected with influencers. I mean, all those people you mentioned are all personal friends of mine that I look to for how do we. I'm looking to you, as a younger generation. How do we get the message out? How do we communicate the message? How do we think big? How do we think bigger? How do we get out of our boxes and bust down the walls of the box and say, what can we do? What I would say for the struggle for manufacturers is, the need today is a skilled workforce. And it's a slow drip. What we're talking about is a slow drip. You got to get people to come in there, and you got to get them educated and trained. But that happens faster than you think. You blink the eye, and 2024 is going to be over, and we're going to be worrying about 2025. I mean, it goes quick. Those are just excuses not to do something. But it's going to take something like you said. That's big thinking. But it's going to take getting into the high schools, junior high and high schools across America, and do it. And I think some of the issues is there's too many different programs competing for the funds, and not all of them with really the heart to change manufacturing, but rather the heart for the funds that they're given to go down that road.
Yeah.
And I'm not being critical to anyone, to anything, but when you have non-manufacturing people giving money out for manufacturing, what solution are you looking for?
It makes for an interesting cycle, doesn't it?
It makes for an interesting cycle.
And a cycle that doesn't seem to create the results we need.
And one that hasn't been broken to this day.
Correct.
This is Shop Rescue.
Hello, I'm Eric Goglins, VP of Sales with AeroX Technologies. We're a manufacturer of mist collectors. What made me really excited about this project is the fact that mist collection isn't always looked at as a product that makes you money. We wanted to participate and support the shop because that's not a product that they may go out and buy, having financial hardships possibly, and we want to give them that ability to have a clean, safe work environment. So I really hope this show opens eyes of the owners of some of these other shops that may be struggling, to show them that there is a way to do this correctly. Instead of trying to do the bare minimum for the lowest cost possible, you can bring up your quality and charge the price for it that you need to.
All right, Christian, did I give you enough time to think about, from the outside looking in, what we might be able to do to excite a generation that doesn't care?
Yeah, you did. So I really knew my answer right off rip. It was I think you have to make it sexy, basically. So like, make it cool, make it fun. Pretty much exactly what you're doing. So you're doing the right thing, but I think that's a big part of it because, like pretty much everybody else, I didn't know anything about it going in, and then meeting you, so much different. In my head, a shop would be dirty and, there's crap everywhere and, you're grimy at the end of the day. But seeing you seeing your social media and things like that and all these different manufacturing companies, beautiful, beautiful factories, if that's what the correct terminology would be.
Yeah.
So I think just educating people, but in a fun, cool way. I think
so we
that's
need
key.
to be the LMFAO of manufacturing with I'm sexy
Yeah.
and I know it.
For young kids, yeah. For younger kids, yeah, 100%.
I like that answer. And for everyone who's watching and listening right now, I am going to invite Christian at some point to join me on the show and in this seat, because I think Christian has a lot of questions for me that I don't answer because I'm always doing the interviewing. So I'm going to let him I'm going to be the guest for Christian, and you'll get to meet him so you'll know the voice behind all the comments I make and his statements as well. Roger, I want to talk a little bit real quick about the association for people who aren't currently in there. Before we started this show, I asked you, what's 2024 look like? You said it looks good. We have some great plans. I asked you, are you getting younger companies, younger owners of companies into associations. You said that you are, which I think is a good thing, because before you and I talked about a year ago or so, in my head, I was thinking, good old boys club. I'm thinking an older generation that's clinging on to something where you can just hang out with each other. What service are you providing when there's the internet, which we sort of addressed a little bit
Right.
ago, right? But there is so much to it. If for everyone watching and listening right now, if you haven't seen the Engage event that Roger and I were with, where we're talking about the interviewing the emerging leaders, these are young folks who are pumped, who are stoked to shake hands, give high fives, be face to face, things, and they said it on camera. We couldn't do this on the internet. We wouldn't be able to. So associations exist for those reasons. So the couple of questions I have for you, Roger, what does 2024 look like? And what do you offer to those folks out there who still are on the fence right now going, I don't need an association?
Well, I think first of all is that the realized the value of relationships. In your life, who do you hang out with? You hang out with your buddies. I would tell you, when you want to talk shop talk, who do you talk to? All of a sudden, that buddy group gets real small. It may not be one buddy that knows anything about manufacturing. It may not be your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your priest, your preacher. All those in your sphere of influence, there's nobody to talk shop with. But you get with a fellow shop person, which we saw at our emerging leaders. They're talking shop. I mean, they're going so fast, high-fiving what they're doing, the changes they're making, the impact they're having. One girl talking about the needles they make for surgery.
Right.
She was like, we're changing lives. And so it's that message, and that is the message NTMA is trying to bring, to the younger people. And for somebody that says they don't need to be a part of it, I'm saying you do. There's strength in numbers, because you're trying to fight things that you can't fight alone. And you can be a successful company and say, I'm successful in fighting this. You may be successful. But I will tell you that many of our members come to us and say, during the pandemic, the best thing that happened to them were they were a part of a community. And it's because I'm a part of community is how I survived through COVID and through our companies being broken, toned down, what to do. Like I told people, I said, we were social distancing before the government even knew what the words were. Because you know what? 98% of our members didn't shut down during COVID. We had to change on the fly. We were still making parts that were necessary for our economy to move forward. And so we weren't waiting. And one thing about manufacturing, if you don't like to wait, manufacturing's a great place to be, because we don't have time to wait. We have to change things, and that's got to be the message. And that message is, how do we move things in Washington? You move it by volume of people. If I could go and say, I represent 10,000 companies in the U.S., and we're small businesses, all of a sudden they're asking me to come to the meetings about manufacturing policy in the United States. The reality is, the reason they don't have to do it today, and they only get to invite what we think are the big ones, is because they have enough, they have a seat at the table. But they can keep us in the back room, as long as we can go, but we'll be quiet. You get in the back room. We got to get out of the back room. And the only way we do it is to come together as a group. And, is it giving back to the industry? It absolutely is, but it's not giving back to the industry. It's protecting the industry for our individual members. Because for NTMA, it's all about our members. The neat thing about me and my staff, we go to work every day for one reason. How do we enhance our members' companies? How do we make their lives better, easier, and more competitive? That's our focus every day. I get the greatest job in the world. How do I help people be more successful? How do I take the things I've learned in my career and get them out to others to let them know that it was NTMA, it was people, other members, it was other competitors that really taught me about manufacturing. They taught me how to fight the battles. I've had the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat in this industry. I've been on the hilltops crowing, and I've been down in the dumps just hoping we'd survive. But some of it was the people who helped me in those valleys were also the ones that got me to the mountaintop. And I would say that's what manufacturing associations can do. If you're in the right association, and I don't mean that towards NTMA, just, for industries that are looking forward, forward thinking. You know, you can go to the good old boys club. NTMA is over that. We're forward thinking companies. As I tell them, our ships are out to sail. When the wind blows, we're blowing in the right direction. And the only thing that can help us change manufacturing's lives if more of us join together to give us more impact. I always tell people, I don't want to be president of a big association. I just want to be a big association to have greater impact for our members. And frankly, that's one of the few ways we can do it. We want to have a bigger impact on workforce development. More of us join together. If you want to have a bigger impact on government regulations that are going to crush us, that they're talking about today in Washington, that are going to, this 80-degree rule, these making sure you list everybody there, every sickness you've had the last year, all those kind of regulations are the things that the only way to fight them is you come together with a group of, you have critical mass. And it's about, I'm not here to tell somebody how to make a part. I'm not here to tell somebody how to make critical parts and how to machine it different. That's their expertise. I'm here to support you with things that aren't your expertise. Government regulations. How do we entice the next generation workforce? Those are things we do together. Some people say, I'm successful on my own. You're successful on your own for yourself. But for U.S. manufacturing, you're not successful. And the only way we can do it is to come together as a group. And I just want to be a part of helping lead that association that can make somebody's life easier. Listen, again, I've been in this my whole career. I know the good, I know the ups and downs, and I know the challenges. And these challenges can only be solved if you try to solve them together.
Well, I appreciate you coming together on this show for me, that's for sure. You're always a pleasure. So we've been pretty serious up to this point, yeah? We've had hell of a topics. I mean, it's been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for everyone watching and listening as well. So we're going to play a couple of games.
As I'm sweating bullets over here on every question.
Are you really?
No.
Hasn't been that bad, has it?
No, you're
Don't
good.
scare off the guys I want to have on here next, the guys and gals. Come on.
Hey, bring it on, guys.
So we're going to play a couple of games in just a minute. The audience loves the games. Christian loves the games as well. But I'm going to ask a couple of lighthearted questions just to kind of get into the mood of these games as well. I have about 30 or 40 or 50 just lighthearted questions that we can just have some fun with before we move into the games themselves. So the first one I want to ask you is, what fictional character do you think would be great at manufacturing and why? Any idea?
Well,
I mean, for me, I'd pick something just random off the wall, like a Merlin or something like that. It has all the magic that can make whatever he wants, right? But that doesn't really seem like it pertains to the question itself. But I'm thinking fictional character. That's kind of tough. Who would I pick?
yeah, that's a good one.
Oh, maybe some of the droids from like Star Wars. We got a lot of Star Wars stuff.
I
around
was
us.
I was thinking I was going down the space avenue.
Yeah.
So you know, that was my realm. I just didn't get to the person.
Yeah, and it would be something like, I don't know, let's just say Star Wars. I like Star Wars. We're gonna go with that. All right. What is the strangest thing that you've ever seen made in a factory? The strangest thing I've ever seen, I can't actually say on camera, and I'm not going to, but it does go into an industry that's very popular. But I'm going to leave it at that and let Roger answer this question.
Well, unfortunately, mine went down a little the same avenue as yours did, but one of the guys made a condom roller. That's how the condoms were rolled up to put in the package.
Really?
Yes.
I can imagine how that might work,
And
actually.
and I don't want to tell you what it looked like.
That's pretty cool. All right, we're going to do one more just unique and fun question. You get how these games are
Yeah,
going to
I'm
be
with
as
you.
well, right? We're just having a little bit of fun. This is a good one. How would you explain the importance of manufacturing to a 5-year-old? I mean, I don't have a 5-year-old anymore, but I did babysit a 5-year-old over the weekend. And that for me would be a good question as well. How would you break down manufacturing for a 5-year-old?
I would take a toy and I'd pull it what pieces apart I could.
It's why he's crying.
and I'd say, let's put it together. Somebody, we made this wheels. We're gonna put the wheels together. We're gonna put this on this axle. And I think showing them that all these pieces come together in what they make. You know, you sort of do that at Christmas with your kids. You buy them something and you have to assemble it. That's the perfect example of manufacturing coming together, taking all the pieces. Because I look at NTMA members, they don't make the airplanes, but they make the fuel systems on airplanes. The airplane couldn't fly without it, but they don't make the airplane. You know, spaceships that go into space, they make a fuel dispenser on that. It wouldn't go into the sky, but they don't make the whole spaceship. So trying to show kids how things, bringing all these pieces together, makes something.
You know what? You know what I'm gonna do? When they talk about how wonderful their shower water is, I'm gonna turn it off. Let them stink. When they talk about, oh, I'm too lazy to go to the store today, I'm gonna make them walk. Your car doesn't work anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do that to everyone. But it is kind of the idea of saying, guess what? All your luxuries, oh, no more remote for you. You want to change the channel? You gotta get up and pick a channel from the TV screen itself. No more remote. Yeah, I like to have fun with it. But Legos are great for how you described it, right?
Absolutely.
That's a lifelong
Absolutely.
toy for a lot of people.
And find somebody, I don't care what the age they are, that doesn't like Legos.
Right? It's just fun.
They just, over 10, they may not admit it, or over 20 or over 50, but everybody loves Legos.
Christian, you like Legos?
My whole life. Whole life.
That's right.
Why? Because we're creative people.
Yes.
And if you like to be creative, manufacturing's the place to be creative.
Absolutely correct. All right, you ready to play a couple of games?
Yeah, let's go.
The two games we're going to play today for everyone watching and listening is Would You Rather. Would You Rather is this unique concept where we never pick anything good because both options are bad, or at least one leans in a direction more to our personality. We'll do about 3 of those probably. We'll see how Roger does with it. The second game, which I think is a whole lot of fun, is just called Rapid Fire. Rapid Fire is one of those things where you ask 5 or 6, 7 questions depending on how Roger's doing today, and the first thing that pops out, poof, poof, and I'm real bad at all the games. Believe me, everyone who's been watching this series, I lose at them all. But it's fun. It's fun to lose sometimes. So, Roger, you ready for a couple?
Let's go.
All right, buddy. So, first game is going to be Would You Rather. So, would you rather design a completely automated production line or a high-precision manual craftsmanship workshop?
Production line.
Yeah? Why is that?
Once you do it, you monitor it, and you can continue to improve it, improve it, and improve it.
That's a pretty solid answer. I'm going to ask another question that might contradict your previous question, or it might just add to it. We'll find out. Would you rather work in a factory with robots doing all the work or a facility where everything is handmade?
Well, you are putting me at a conflict.
Yeah, right? Well, I was scrolling down my list here. I was like, ooh, maybe that'll be a great part 2 to this one.
I think robotics. I think that's the world that we live in. There's certain industries that can absorb that, and there's certain industries that can't. But you could continue to improve with robots. The opportunity would be endless.
I'm going to give you a third one that kind of goes down that line again to see if we can get you to contradict yourself. You ready? This third one is, would you rather implement AI-driven quality control in manufacturing or stick to traditional human inspection methods?
Well, of course, I could justify it both ways. Production, if you're in true production, you got to go the AI route. If you're not in true production, if you're into true contract manufacturing, I would stay with human element.
Yeah. Route. I think that's a great way to follow up for your third one there, Roger. I appreciate that.
And that sort of goes with the other 2.
It does.
Well.
It goes right along. And you did great. I think you did great. All right. Rapid fire. Thought-provoking. First thing that pops into your head. You ready?
That's scary.
This is the last game we're going to play today as we start to close out this podcast. And thank you all for watching and listening. So we're going to do 3, 4, 5, 6 of these. We'll see. You ready? Okay. 3D printing. Revolution or overhyped?
Revolution.
I think so too, actually. Mass production or bespoke creation?
Bespoke creation.
CNC machining, magic or just mechanics?
Mechanics.
Robots in manufacturing, friends or foes?
Friends.
Lean manufacturing, essential or overrated?
Essential.
AI in manufacturing, a blessing or a curse?
Blessing.
You have nailed it, my friend. Thank you all for watching. I'm going to do a little shout out, of course. And Roger, I have a gift for you as well. Welcome to the VIP experience here on The Gun Show for everyone watching and listening. We absolutely appreciate you. We know how valuable time is. Thank you to MTDCNC. Thank you to our sponsors, AMT and EBITDA Growth Systems. Roger, I hope you've had as much fun today as I have. Is there any last messages you'd like to offer the audience before we close this thing out?
Tony, I appreciate it. I'm always thrilled to be with you, and I appreciate your passion. And I will tell you that passion will trump everything. And so, if you have a passion for manufacturing, it will trump what you think you don't know. You can overcome anything with passion. Find what you're passionate about and do it. And I invite you to check out manufacturing. And for those of you in manufacturing, tell your story. Make sure people know what you do. And that will change the world, and that will change how many people come to your company. And it'll change your home. Tell your kids what you do, because they want to go home and say, my dad, my mom did this. What's your mom and dad? Oh, they work at a shop. No, let them go in and say, my mom and dad make things that make airplanes fly. And then little Johnny's going to be the head of the class.
Perfectly said. So for those of you out there who are sexy and you know it, just like my sound producer, engineer, producer of the show, Christian over here, if you are sexy and you know it, join us in manufacturing. We are at Podcast Junkies today. This is MTDCNC. If you want to find this podcast, tune in on YouTube, where we have over 60,000 followers. Find us on LinkedIn. Go to our website, mtdcnc.com. Join us on Instagram. There's over 80,000 followers there as well. Manufacturing is actually cool. I mean, look behind me on my other. Oh, you can't. If you're listening, you can't look. But if you're watching, you can see Darth Vader. You can see the Mandalorian helmet. I mean, we got all sorts of cool stuff. We got John Grimsmo's $300 pin up here. All right. Yes, I get excited. Thank you all again one last time. This is the Gun Show VIP edition. Christian, thank you for everything you're doing. Roger, one last time, thank you as well, my friend. We'll not all see you. I'll see you all again next time.